You know, it's amazing how sometimes just a single sentence written hundreds of years ago can hit you like a ton of bricks. It can be a riddle, a key, a mirror, something that just completely challenges the way you think about your life. Today, we're diving into one of those from the one and only William Blake.
The fox provides for himself, but God provides for the lion. Now, on the surface, it sounds like something from a kid's fable, right? But underneath, Blake is hiding this absolutely radical idea, a critique of our whole modern obsession with control, with calculation, and that relentless pressure to do it all yourself.
So, what is he really getting at? I mean, is this just about two animals, or is it something deeper, like a hidden guide to two completely different ways of being in the world? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack.
See, Blake isn't just comparing a fox and a lion. He's actually laying out a kind of spiritual hierarchy. He's showing us a conflict between two opposing forces that really exist inside every single one of us, the path of the fox and the path of the lion.
And the split is pretty stark. On one side, you've got the fox. It's all about intellect, calculation, and this constant need to provide for itself. And that need, it comes from a place of fear. But on the other side, you've got the lion. It's pure energy, pure instinct. It doesn't provide, it receives. And it does that from a place of total trust.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Blake calls the fox's intellect devouring. Think about that. It consumes, it analyzes, it breaks everything down into little pieces. But the lion's energy, he calls that prolific. It creates, it overflows, it just is. This isn't just about different strategies for survival. It's about drawing power from two completely different sources.
So, let's take a walk down the path of the fox first. And honestly, this world might feel pretty familiar to a lot of us. It's the world of the hustle, the endless grind. It's a life that's all about being clever, being strategic, and this constant nagging feeling of anxious effort.
The fox gets by on its wits, right? It's smart enough to navigate all the traps the world sets. But its entire operating system is based on a deep-seated fear of scarcity. This core belief that there's just not enough to go around. And that fear forces it into what Blake calls the prisons of law. These are the rules, the social games, the career ladders you have to climb. And the result? Well, it's a life of constant background anxiety.
Don't get me wrong, the fox is smart. But its wisdom is tactical, it's earthly, and in the end, it's limited. It's stuck in this endless loop of providing, working, scheming, planning for the next meal, the next quarter, the next promotion. It's a totally horizontal life, always just looking at the next few feet of ground in front of it.
Blake actually had a name for this whole way of living. He called it the horses of instruction. Just picture it, following the safe, predictable path. It's all about conventional wisdom, the rule book that says it'll keep you secure. But in reality, it's just building a fence around your soul. The fox, well, the fox is the undisputed master of that fenced-in yard.
Okay, now let's completely switch gears and turn to the path of the lion. If the fox's world is all anxious maneuvering, the lion's world is one of effortless power. It's an existence that almost seems blessed, like it's operating with some kind of divine favor.
And Blake doubles down on this idea with another one of his famous lines. The tiger of wrath is wiser than the horses of instruction. He's saying that raw, primal, instinctive energy, whether it's a tiger or a lion, has a much deeper wisdom than all the cautious, calculated knowledge of the fox combined.
The lion's world is just different. It's pure, direct existence. It's a symbol of what Blake called our poetic genius, that innate, creative, visionary part of us. It doesn't operate from fear, it operates from an undefiled soul of delight. And here's the real game changer. It transcends the whole economy of effort. It trusts that its very being is powerful enough to command what it needs from the universe.
Just for a second, let's go back to the fox. Its entire reality is built on this one single premise, a life lived in fear of scarcity.
And now the lion. It's the complete opposite, an effortless participation in life's abundance. The contrast is just everything. One claws its way through life, the other is just a natural part of a universe that already provides.
Now, it's really tempting to look at this and just say, okay, lion good, fox bad. Got it. But Blake's thinking is way more sophisticated than that. He's not telling us to get rid of the fox. He sees them as two necessary, opposing forces that create this incredible divine tension.
He had a word for this: contraries.
Blake was convinced that real progress, both in ourselves and in the world, is impossible without this dynamic push and pull. You absolutely need both reason and energy. You need the fox, and you need the lion.
So here's how it all comes together. The fox's cunning is useful, no doubt. We need it for the practical stuff, what Blake calls the outward circumference of life. You know, paying the bills, getting along with people. But, and this is the most important part, our true allegiance, our core identity, has to belong to the lion of the spirit.
Because there's a real danger here. If we let that pragmatic fox totally run the show, if its anxious little calculations silence the lion's roar of passion and instinct, well, Blake says our soul becomes a stagnant pool. We become creatures of pure, boring pragmatism, and we lose all our vitality.
And that brings us to the final and, I think, most important part of all this. How do we actually apply this? It's about making a conscious shift away from a life of just surviving and toward a life of what you might call divine genius.
What Blake is really laying out here is a kind of spiritual journey. It starts with a decision to stop all the anxious providing for our small, scared ego. The next step is to start seeing yourself as part of a much bigger divine energy. And that shift in perspective is what lets you move beyond just being clever to survive and finally step into that majestic reality of the lion, a reality where you are provided for.
The payoff for making this journey is huge. I mean, listen to Blake's language here. By embracing the lion inside, we break the manacles of fear. We stop being prisoners of our own anxiety. And when we do that, we enter the palace of wisdom, a state of being that's both incredibly powerful and incredibly free. So ultimately, this is the choice the proverb puts in front of us. We can spend our lives providing for survival, constantly scheming and working away inside prisons we built for ourselves. Or we can choose to receive a life, to transcend that whole game of effort through the sheer power and exuberance of our own inner vision. So I guess I'll just leave you with the question that this piece of wisdom forces us to ask. Take a really honest look at your life, at your decisions, your worries. Are you operating like the fox, constantly providing for a life of survival? Or are you learning to trust that line within and maybe, just maybe, starting to receive a life of divine genius?
And one final piece of Blakean wisdom to chew on. The crooked roads without improvement are the crooked roads of genius. Maybe the lion's path isn't straight, maybe it's not safe or improved by the fox's logic, and maybe true genius is found by following our own wild, crooked, and divinely provided road.